In the autumn of 2023, Michael Jordan, a man whose name is synonymous with victory, whose silhouette is a global icon, was scrolling through his tablet in the quiet solitude of his Florida estate. He was reviewing market reports, but his attention was snagged by a notification from his PR team, flagged as urgent. A click opened a video that, in an instant, dismantled the billionaire's composure and transported him back 5 decades. The video showed an 81-year-old woman, her face a roadmap of a long life, her hands gnarled with arthritis, carefully wiping down tables in a school cafeteria. Her name was Dorothy Williams, and she was his first teacher. She was still working, not for purpose, but for survival. Her movements, though slowed by age, held the same meticulous grace she once used to shape the mind and character of a boy destined for legend. To understand why this grainy 2-minute clip would shatter the heart of a global icon and propel him toward a decision that would leave the world in awe, we must rewind to 1968, to a small preschool in Wilmington, North Carolina, where an extraordinary woman first saw a spark in a restless 5-year-old boy and began to fan the flames of greatness. You can perceive that some of the most profound architects of our destiny are not the ones who share our blood, but the ones who, with patience and wisdom, teach us how to build a life of substance, integrity, and grace. It was the late summer of 1968. James and Dolores Jordan, a young couple with deep roots in their community, were determined to give their children the best possible start. James, a plant supervisor, and Dolores, a bank teller, understood the value of education, not just as a path to a better job, but as the foundation of character. Michael, their third child, was a whirlwind of energy, a competitive spirit already burning bright in his 5-year-old frame. He needs more than just a place to play. Dolores said to James one evening, her brow furrowed with a familiar mix of love and concern. He needs a place that will challenge him, that will channel that fire of his into something productive. He needs a teacher who understands him. Their search led them to a modest, church-run preschool, a place filled with the scent of chalk dust, tempera paint, and freshly baked cookies. It was there they met Mrs. Dorothy Williams. At 36, Dorothy was already a veteran educator, a woman who possessed a quiet authority that commanded respect without ever raising her voice. She had a master's degree in early childhood development, but her true credentials were in her eyes. They saw not just the child in front of her, but the potential adult within. "I don't just teach the ABCs and 123 Mr. and Mrs. Jordan," Dorothy said during their first meeting, her voice calm and measured. "I teach respect. I teach discipline. I teach children how to be good citizens of our small classroom so they can one day be good citizens of the world. The most important lesson is that the effort is more important than the outcome. Winning is a moment, but the discipline you build to get there lasts a lifetime. How is it possible that we can meet someone for a fleeting moment and know, with an unshakable certainty, that they are the person we have been searching for?" In Dorothy Williams, James and Dolores saw not just a teacher, but a partner in the monumental task of raising a good man. From the very first day, Dorothy established that her classroom was a place of structure and high expectations. Michael, with his boundless energy and nascent competitive streak, was a challenge. He wanted to be first in line, to win every game of red light, green light, to build the tallest tower of blocks. Dorothy saw the fire, but she also saw the impatience that accompanied it, the frustration that flared when he didn't immediately succeed, and a tendency to believe his natural ability meant he didn't have to try as hard as the other children. "Michael, come here, please," Dorothy called one afternoon. She had watched him hastily scribble a drawing and declare it finished, while his classmates were still carefully choosing their colors. She knelt, bringing herself to his eye level, a gesture of respect that made every child in her class feel seen. "I'm going to tell you a story about 2 basketball players," she began, her voice drawing him in. Naturally, this leads us to a truth about formative education. The most indelible lessons are not delivered in lectures, but wrapped in stories that capture a child's imagination, planting seeds of wisdom that lie dormant for years before blossoming into character. One player, Dorothy said, was born with incredible talent. He could run faster and jump higher than anyone without even trying. The other player wasn't as gifted, but he practiced every single day. He practiced his dribbling until his hands ached. He practiced his shots when everyone else had gone home. When they played a game, the talented player would often win with a flashy move, but the other player, the one who practiced, knew the fundamentals. He knew how to be in the right place at the right time. He knew how to help his teammates. She paused, letting the story settle. Now, Michael, which player do you think became a true champion? 5-year-old Michael, with the simple logic of a child, answered, the one who could jump the highest. No, sweet boy, Dorothy said, her hand gently resting on his shoulder. The one who became a champion was the one who practiced. Talent is a gift from God. What you do with it, the work you put in, that's your gift back to God. The flashy player had moments of magic, but the disciplined player had a lifetime of excellence. Remember that. Your effort is what defines you, not just your talent. What's most impressive is how certain truths can penetrate a child's consciousness long before they can articulate their meaning. They become part of the internal architecture, guiding choices and forging habits that will define them decades later. Dorothy's classroom had simple, non-negotiable rules. You always said please and thank you. You cleaned up your own mess. And if you saw a classmate struggling, you helped them clean up theirs. You waited your turn, and you never ever said, I can't. There is no can't in this classroom, Dorothy would say. There is only I will try again. During games on the small playground, Dorothy's focus was never on who won. When Michael would race to the front of the line, she wouldn't praise his speed. When he would get frustrated after missing a shot at the miniature basketball hoop, she would praise his perseverance. Good try, Michael, she'd say. What can we do differently next time? Let's think about our form. Mrs. Williams, Michael asked one day, his lower lip trembling with frustration after a game of tag where he wasn't as fast as an older boy. Why don't you care that I lost? Oh, I don't care that you lost, she responded, wiping a smudge of dirt from his cheek. I care that you're thinking about giving up. What makes me proud is when you get tagged, and you get right back up and try again. What makes me proud is when you help a friend who has fallen down. Winning is fun, but being a good sport, being a good friend, that's what makes you a real winner in life. How many times are we fortunate enough to encounter a guide who sees not just the person we are, but the person we have the potential to become, and who possesses the wisdom to nurture that potential with both firmness and love? The years in Dorothy's class were foundational in ways Michael would only fully appreciate as a man. She taught him the rhythm of discipline. She taught him that respect was not a thing to be demanded, but a thing to be earned through action. But perhaps the most enduring lesson was about humility. She made every child feel important, from the quietest girl who loved to read in the corner to the most boisterous boy on the playground. Always look the person who is helping you in the eye and say thank you, she would constantly remind them, whether it was the janitor who cleaned their room or the lunch lady who served their milk. Everyone has a story, and everyone deserves respect. In 1970, when Michael was ready to move on to elementary school, the farewell was emotional. Dorothy had become a fixture in the Jordan family's life, a trusted advisor and a beloved figure. Mrs. Williams, Michael said on his last day, a confident 6-year-old now, how will I remember all the things you taught me? Dorothy smiled, her eyes crinkling at the corners. She reached into the pocket of her apron and pulled out a small, smooth, gray stone, polished by the sea. She had a collection of them she kept for moments like this. I want you to have this, she said, pressing it into his small hand. It's a focus stone. When you feel frustrated, or when you're about to give up, I want you to hold this stone and remember what we learned. Remember that your effort is what matters. Remember to be a good sport. This won't help you win, Michael. It will help you be the kind of man who deserves to win. Michael clutched the stone tightly. I promise I'll never forget. And I promise, Dorothy replied, her voice thick with emotion, that I will always be proud of the man you are becoming. Your effort is what defines you. As Michael Jordan began his ascent toward a destiny that would reshape the world of sports, the seeds Dorothy Williams had planted would continue to grow. shaping his legendary work ethic, his fierce competitiveness, and his understanding of responsibility. What neither of them could know in that moment of farewell was that life would lead Dorothy down a path of quiet struggle, a path that would test her own resilience, while Michael soared to a height where the air was thin and the world watched his every move. And then, decades later, destiny would intervene, orchestrating a reunion that would prove that the most powerful connections are forged not in the glare of the spotlight, but in the gentle, steady light of a preschool classroom. The subsequent decades saw Michael Jordan's name etched into the annals of history, but the whirlwind of fame, fortune, and relentless competition created an unintentional distance from the woman who had laid his character's foundation. While he was collecting championship rings and MVP trophies, Dorothy Williams was fighting silent battles in her modest Wilmington home. Grappling with hardships she was too proud to ever let become a burden for the boy she had helped raise. You can perceive that life has a peculiar and often cruel way of separating people who hold a place in each other's hearts. The chasm grows not from a lack of love, but from the relentless march of circumstance, creating a distance that feels both vast and surmountable, yet is rarely crossed. In 1981, as Michael was leading the University of North Carolina to a national championship, he would often find himself clutching the smooth, cool focus stone in his pocket before a big game. The lessons about effort and discipline echoed in his mind, a constant, quiet hum beneath the roar of the crowd. Sometimes I hear her voice in my head, Michael once confessed to his college coach, Dean Smith, reminding me to focus on the fundamentals, not the noise. That's the sign of a great teacher, son, Smith had replied. They become a part of your conscience. After being drafted by the Chicago Bulls in 1984, Michael tried a few times during his brief visits back to Wilmington to find Mrs. Williams, but he discovered she had moved from her old address. The church preschool had been relocated, its records archived and inaccessible. In a world before the internet and social media, the trail went cold. Life, with its relentless demands of a burgeoning global superstar, pulled him forward, and the search faded into a well-intentioned but unfulfilled thought. How is it that in a world that would soon be defined by infinite connectivity, a person of such significance can simply vanish from our lives, leaving behind only the indelible imprint of their teachings that continue to shape us in their absence? While Michael was becoming Air Jordan, Dorothy was facing a very different reality. She continued teaching until the late 1990s, shaping hundreds of young minds with the same dedication she had shown Michael. But in 1998, her husband, a kind man who had worked at the local shipyard, was diagnosed with a rare form of cancer. The ensuing medical battle was long, arduous, and financially devastating. It drained their life savings, forcing Dorothy to take an early retirement to become his full-time caregiver. After he passed away in 2002, Dorothy, then in her late 60s, discovered that her pension and the remaining Social Security were not enough to cover the rising costs of living and her own mounting health issues. "I can't ask anyone for help," Dorothy confided in her neighbor and closest friend, a retired nurse named Eleanor Vance. "Especially not Michael. I taught that boy to be self-reliant. It would be the height of hypocrisy for me to become dependent on him now." Eleanor would often argue, "Dorothy, you didn't just teach him, you nurtured him. You helped build his foundation. There's no shame in letting him know you're struggling." "No," Dorothy would reply, her voice carrying the same gentle finality she used in her classroom decades before. "I did my job. He has his life, his incredible success, his family. I will not be a shadow from the past seeking a handout. My pride is all I have left." Naturally, this leads us to a devastating truth about pride, that our fierce determination not to be a burden can inadvertently build a prison of silent suffering, depriving those who love us of the opportunity to express their gratitude and care. In 2005, at the age of 70, Dorothy Williams made a decision that pained her deeply. She re-entered the workforce. With her skills not updated for a digital world and her physical strength diminished, her options were starkly limited. She found a job as a part-time cafeteria worker and cleaner at a local public middle school. The irony was not lost on her. She was back in a school, But now she was invisible, wiping tables and mopping floors long after the students and teachers had gone home. "At least it's honest work," she told Eleanor, her chin held high. "And it's for the children in a way. A clean school is a healthy school." The work was grueling for a woman in her 70s. Her hands, which had once guided tiny fingers to hold a crayon correctly, now ached with arthritis as she scrubbed pots and pans. Her back, which had once bent to kneel at a child's level, now throbbed after hours of standing, yet Dorothy brought her unshakable dignity to the job. She was always punctual, her work was always immaculate, and she treated her few colleagues with the same warmth and respect she had shown everyone her entire life. What's most impressive is how a person of true nobility can maintain their grace and sense of purpose even in the most humbling of circumstances, transforming a job of necessity into an act of service. Throughout all these years, Dorothy followed Michael's career with a quiet maternal pride. She watched his games on her small television, cheering silently in her living room. She beamed whenever commentators praised not just his otherworldly talent, but his unparalleled work ethic and his leadership. "That's my boy," she would whisper to herself. He remembered the lessons. Eleanor would frequently urge her, "Just write him a letter, Dorothy. I'm sure he'd be thrilled to hear from you." "And say what?" Dorothy would counter. "Hello, Michael. It's your old preschool teacher. I'm so proud of you. By the way, I'm cleaning cafeterias to pay for my heart medication. He remembers me as a strong, wise woman. I want that to be the memory he holds." How many times in life does our love for someone steer us toward decisions that, while born of the purest intentions, ultimately deny us both the connection we so deeply need and deserve? In 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic swept the globe, Dorothy, at 78, faced new challenges. As an elderly woman with pre-existing health conditions, she was in a high-risk category, but she couldn't afford to stop working. She wore 2 masks, carried her own sanitizer, and worked with even greater solitude, often being the only person in the cavernous school building during her late shifts. By 2023, at 81 years old, Dorothy was still working 4 nights a week. The arthritis in her hands had worsened, making every task and exercise in painful endurance. But she persisted, fueled by the same inner strength that had defined her entire life. It was during one of these quiet, solitary nights that a young security guard, a 22-year-old named Marcus Hayes, decided to record a conversation that would inadvertently change everything. "Mrs. Williams," Marcus said, approaching her as she wiped down tables. He had worked with her for a year and was endlessly fascinated by her stories. "Tell me that story again, about how you taught Michael Jordan." Dorothy paused her work, a warm smile illuminating her tired face. She was always happy to talk about the boy she had helped raise. "Oh, that Michael," she began, her voice a soft, melodic cadence. "He was a special one, even then, full of fire, but he had a good heart. He learned the most important lesson, that your effort, your hard work, that's what makes you great, not just the talent you're born with." Marcus, without Dorothy noticing, was recording the conversation on his phone. "Do you ever miss him?" he asked gently. Dorothy fell silent for a moment, her gaze distant. Her answer, when it came, was filled with a profound and aching honesty. "Every single day," she said softly. "But I see him on the television, and I see the man he became. A leader, a family man. He learned to fly on his own. That was always the goal. My job was to help him build his wings." As Dorothy resumed her work, her movements a testament to the virtues she had preached for a lifetime. She had no idea that Marcus Hayes, moved by her story, would post the video to his social media account that very night. She had no idea that she was about to become an unwilling viral sensation, setting in motion a chain of events that would finally bridge the chasm of time and circumstance, proving that true, formative love finds a way to overcome even the most stubborn barriers of pride. The video ignited online. It was shared by a local news anchor, then a national sports blogger, then by millions of people captivated by the quiet dignity of the elderly woman and her connection to a global legend. The algorithm, relentless and efficient, carried the video across the digital ocean until it landed on a screen in Florida on a Tuesday morning that began as ordinary and would end with Michael Jordan's world being irrevocably altered. Upon seeing Dorothy Williams' daughter, more fragile, yet radiating the same unwavering grace he remembered from his childhood, Michael felt a tidal wave of emotions: love, nostalgia, and a profound, gut-wrenching guilt. It spurred him to an immediate course of action that would stun everyone who knew him. You can perceive that the universe sometimes conspires to mend our most painful oversights, using the impersonal tools of modern technology to reunite hearts that were never meant to be apart, transforming a chance viewing into a miracle that redefines our entire sense of priority. It was just after 10 a.m. when Este Portnoy, his longtime manager and confidant, called him. "Michael, you need to see this. It's everywhere. A video about your preschool teacher." "A controversy?" Michael asked, his voice instantly sharp. In his world, viral was often a synonym for problem. "No," Este said, her own voice uncharacteristically soft. "It's emotional. Just watch it." He clicked the link. The moment Dorothy Williams' face appeared on his screen, Michael's breath caught in his throat. It was her. The 55 years that had passed melted away. She was thinner, her hair a crown of silver, her movement slower, but the light in her eyes was unmistakable. It was the same light that had made him feel safe, seen, and capable of anything. How is it possible for recognition to be so instantaneous and yet so devastating? It felt as if he were looking through a time traveler's window, seeing a past he had allowed to become a faded photograph, now roaring back to life in high definition. In the video, Marcus Hayes asked, "Tell me that story again, about how you taught Michael Jordan." Dorothy's response struck Michael with the force of a physical blow. He was a special one. He learned the most important lesson, that your effort, your hard work, that's what makes you great. He had to pause the video. Tears, hot and unexpected, welled in his eyes. Her voice, it was exactly as he remembered it, calm, kind, and full of unshakable conviction. When Marcus asked, "Do you ever miss him?" her answer shattered him. "Every single day. But I see the man he became. He learned to fly on his own. That was always the goal." "My God," Michael whispered, his hand instinctively going to his pocket, where, in a small velvet pouch in his travel bag, he still kept the smooth, gray focus stone she had given him. "She's working in a cafeteria at 81, and I never knew." What's most impressive is the speed and totality with which guilt can ambush a person, especially upon the realization that someone you love has been suffering in silence while you lived a life of unimaginable abundance, not through malice, but through the profound ignorance of their circumstances. He immediately dialed his mother. "Mom, did you see it? The video of Mrs. Williams?" "Michael, I just saw it," Dolores Jordan replied, her voice choked with emotion. "Oh, honey, how did we lose touch with her? How did we let this happen?" "I don't know," Michael said, his voice thick with a resolve that was as famous as his jump shot. "But I'm fixing it. Right now. I need you to help me find her. Today, Mom. Today." Within the hour, Michael had mobilized his formidable team. Private investigators, contacts in Wilmington, his entire administrative staff. The search, which he feared would be a complex undertaking, was shockingly simple. She had been working at the same middle school for nearly 2 decades. She was scheduled to work that very night, a 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. shift. "Get the jet ready. I'm flying to Wilmington in an hour," Michael commanded his assistant. "And flowers. Get the most beautiful bouquet of yellow roses you can find." Yellow was always her favorite color. "And cancel every meeting I have for the rest of the week. Everything." During the flight, Michael watched the video again and again. Each viewing was a fresh torment, revealing details that twisted the knife of his regret. The worn-out soles of her shoes, the way she winced slightly as she bent over to pick up a stray napkin, the institutional pallor of the cafeteria lights on her kind, tired face. Naturally, This leads us to a truth about regret, that sometimes we require stark visual proof of our own negligence to fully comprehend the emotional weight of our omissions, no matter how unintentional they may have been. Michael landed in Wilmington and was driven directly to the middle school, arriving at 9:30 p.m. He walked through the quiet, echoing halls, the scent of floor wax and disinfectant transporting him back in time. The principal, a man who had been hastily summoned and was now trembling with a mixture of shock and awe, led him toward the cafeteria. Through the large double doors, he could see her. She was pushing a large broom, her movements methodical and weary. She hadn't seen him yet. "Mrs. Williams," Michael said, his voice cracking on the name. He stepped into the doorway, holding the enormous bouquet of yellow roses. Dorothy stopped sweeping. She turned slowly, her eyes squinting to see who had called her name. She saw a tall, impeccably dressed man standing in the shadows. For a moment, she thought it was the principal. Then he stepped into the light. She froze, the broom handle slipping from her grasp and clattering to the floor. She thought her mind, or her old heart, was playing tricks on her. "It's me, Mrs. Williams," Michael said, his voice now a near whisper. "It's Michael. I came to thank you, and to apologize. I'm so sorry it took me so long to find you." Dorothy brought a hand to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Michael? My Michael? What are you doing here, child?" How many times in life are we granted a moment that seems to bend the laws of physics, where decades of accumulated emotion, love, and regret are compressed into a few seconds of pure, unadulterated connection? "I should have looked for you. I should have found you years ago," Michael said, walking toward her, tears now streaming freely down his face. "I never should have let you go." Dorothy, her own eyes overflowing, opened her arms. Michael folded his 6'6" frame into her embrace, a hug that spanned 55 years of separation. They stood there for a long time, two figures in the middle of an empty school cafeteria, crying silently as the chasm of time and circumstance dissolved in the warmth of a bond that had never truly been broken. "My boy," Dorothy finally said, pulling back to cup his face in her hands, just as she had done when he was a child with a scraped knee. "Look at the man you've become." "Only because of you," Michael responded, his voice thick. "Everything I am, my work ethic, my discipline, it all started in your classroom. It started with you." They talked for over an hour, sitting at one of the cafeteria tables she had just wiped down. Dorothy, with gentle prodding, told him about her husband's illness, her financial struggles, her years of quiet, difficult work. Michael listened with a growing sense of horror, the scale of his failure to be there for her crashing down on him. "Why didn't you ever call me? Why didn't you reach out?" Michael asked, his voice full of anguish. "I would have helped you with anything. Anything." "Because," Dorothy replied, her voice imbued with the same unwavering wisdom he remembered, "I taught you to be strong and self-reliant. It would have been wrong for me not to live by the same principles. Besides, you had your life, your family, your championships to win. My job was done. I helped you become a good man." Some of life's most profound revelations arrive when we discover that the bright glare of our own success has blinded us to the needs of the very people who helped us achieve it. In that empty cafeteria, Michael Jordan confronted the reality that he had allowed pride and circumstance to sever him from one of the most important architects of his soul. But he also discovered that it is never, ever too late to correct a mistake of the heart, especially when the love that forged the bond still beats strongly in two chests. What Michael Jordan did next would not only transform Dorothy Williams's life, but would also redefine the world's understanding of gratitude, responsibility, and what it truly means to honor those who shaped us. The decision he made in that cafeteria initiated a series of events that would prove that the most powerful actions are born not of obligation, but of pure, unadulterated, and long overdue love. "Mrs. Williams," Michael said as they prepared to leave the school, his voice firm with a resolve that had once intimidated the world's greatest athletes. "You will never work another day in your life. This ends tonight." "Michael, dear," Dorothy protested, a lifetime of pride rising in her. I can't accept charity. You know I can't. You, of all people, know the values I hold. This isn't charity, Michael responded, taking her small arthritic hands in his own. This is a son taking care of his mother. This is a family taking care of its own. It's me, finally getting the chance to give back a fraction of what you gave me. He smiled, his eyes still glistening. Besides, you have a new job to do. A new job? Dorothy asked, her expression a mixture of confusion and intrigue. Yes, he said, teaching my grandchildren the same lessons you taught me. Jasmine's son needs to learn about the focus stone. My daughters need to hear your stories. That's your new job, if you'll accept it, official Jordan family matriarch and chief values officer. How is it possible for a single proposal to so perfectly honor the past, redeem the present, and create a luminous hope for the future? In that moment, Dorothy Williams felt a sense of purpose, dormant for so long, rush back into her heart like a tidal wave. In the days that followed, Michael Jordan executed a plan with the same precision and overwhelming force as a championship-winning fourth-quarter press. He bought a beautiful, single-story home in a quiet, gated community in Jupiter, Florida, just 10 minutes from his own estate. The house was completely furnished and retrofitted for Dorothy's comfort and safety, with walk-in showers, non-slip flooring, and a state-of-the-art medical alert system. He established an irrevocable trust in her name, managed by his own financial team, to ensure she would have the best medical care money could buy for the rest of her life, as specialists for her arthritis, top cardiologists, and any therapy that could improve her quality of life. But the gesture that truly melted Dorothy's heart was when Michael flew to Wilmington on his private jet to personally pack up her small apartment. He didn't send his staff. He did it himself, alongside his mother, Dolores. They spent a weekend carefully wrapping her few precious belongings, listening to her stories, and bridging the gap of the lost decades. Children, Michael said, speaking to his adult daughters, Isabel and Victoria, on a video call from Dorothy's new living room. I want you to meet someone incredibly important. This is Mrs. Dorothy Williams. She taught me everything I know about hard work and respect before I ever touched a basketball professionally. And now, she's going to be part of our lives forever. Isabel, seeing the deep emotion on her father's face, approached the screen. Mrs. Williams, she said, her voice warm. My dad told me you taught him that effort is more important than talent. He made us practice that lesson our whole lives. And he learned it well. Dorothy replied, her eyes shining as she saw the clear reflection of Michael's character in his daughter's respectful demeanor. Now I get to see the beautiful family he built. Naturally, this leads us to a truth about the circles of love, that the most vital lessons become immortal when they are passed down through generations, transmitted not as abstract rules, but through the living example of people who genuinely embody them. Dorothy's official welcome to the family was an event that only Michael Jordan could orchestrate. He owned the Charlotte Hornets, and during halftime of a sold-out home game, a poetic touch, bringing the story home to North Carolina, he walked to center court, not with a celebrity or a politician, but with an 81-year-old retired preschool teacher on his arm. Tonight, I want to honor the real MVP of my life, Michael announced to the 19,000 fans, his voice booming through the arena. Dorothy, radiant in an elegant suit chosen by his daughters, stood beside him, emotional but composed. This is Mrs. Dorothy Williams. She was my preschool teacher. She taught me that your effort is what defines you, long before any coach ever did. The crowd, sensing the profound sincerity of the moment, rose to its feet in a thunderous ovation. But Michael wasn't finished. I found out a few weeks ago that Mrs. Williams was still working, cleaning a school cafeteria to make ends meet, because I was too busy and too foolish to look for her and thank her properly. That mistake is now corrected. He raised Dorothy's hand. From this day forward, she is a cherished member of my family. But her work isn't done. He announced the formation of the Dorothy Williams Foundation for Retired Educators, an organization funded with an initial endowment of $10 million from him personally. Its mission: to provide financial support, healthcare assistance, and a network of community for retired teachers and school support staff who find themselves in situations of financial vulnerability. Mrs. Williams is not a unique case, Michael explained, his voice resonating with passion. There are thousands of Dorothys out there. The teachers, the aides, the janitors, the lunch ladies who shaped generations of children and are now forgotten. This foundation exists to find them, to honor them, and to ensure that none of them have to struggle for dignity in their golden years. What's most impressive is how a personal act of gratitude, when made public, can ignite a cultural conversation, inspiring countless others to reflect on their own debts of honor to the quiet architects of their lives. Dorothy, far from being a passive beneficiary, became the heart and soul of the foundation. She became its active spokesperson, sharing her story, visiting other retired educators, and inspiring families across the country to reconnect with the formative figures from their past. 6 months after her move to Florida, Dorothy had settled into a life that was richer and more purposeful than she could have ever imagined. She spent her mornings reading stories to Michael's grandchildren, teaching them not just to read, but to understand the lessons within the pages. "Now, remember what I told your grandpa," she'd say to Jasmine's young son as he grew frustrated with a puzzle. "We don't say, 'I can't.' We take a deep breath. We hold our focus stone and we say, 'I will try again.'" 1 year after their reunion, Michael organized a surprise for Dorothy's 82nd birthday. He flew her neighbor and best friend, Eleanor Vance, to Florida for a week-long celebration. "Dorothy," Eleanor said, her eyes filled with tears during the birthday dinner, "do you remember all those nights you told me you were just proud of the boy you helped raise? Look where that pride brought you." "No, Eleanor," Dorothy corrected, with the gentle wisdom that had never left her. "Look where love brought us." Michael didn't do any of this out of guilt or obligation. He did it out of love. And that, my dear friend, makes all the difference in the world. 2 years after their reunion, Dorothy Williams sat in a courtside seat as the Hornets played, a cherished guest at every home game she wished to attend. After the game, a young reporter asked Michael what he considered his greatest legacy: the championships, the brand, the billions. Michael smiled and glanced over at Dorothy, who was chatting with his daughter. "All that is temporary," he said. "My legacy? It's that the lessons of a woman named Dorothy Williams, lessons of effort, respect, and discipline being passed down to my grandchildren. It's that maybe, just maybe, our story will inspire someone else to pick up the phone and call their own Mrs. Williams and say thank you." The story of Michael and Dorothy became a global testament to the power of gratitude in action. It proved that it's never too late to bridge a divide, never too late to repay a debt of love, and never too late to transform a lifetime of regret into an act of grace that honors the people who, in the quiet classrooms of our childhood, first taught us how to fly.